live on air this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it's with a lot of pleasure that we've got Dorothy, Juliet, Max, Rosalie, Stuart in the room with me tonight, and we're going to look at what a zine is and how we go about publishing it. But I've asked them to just do a little bit of pre-work in terms of making a kind of feeling response about how much the local congregation they're engaged, that they go to, is engaged with social media. And most are saying they think there's not a majority engaged with social media. And as far as your own ability to cope with social media personally, yeah, again, we feel you only need it in small doses, but one person in the survey thinks that, yeah, there's a lot of use for social media. So I'm really grateful that you've given me that a little bit of initial information, because that enables me now to begin to unpack the idea of how do we communicate really well in an age that has got an absolute bombardment of social media. The emphasis here is that somehow the eportfolio becomes really important for you. I'm sharing my screen with you at present, and what we are doing is having a look at the various groups, and I've decided to show you community news just so you're aware that this is a kind of a main information distribution area, but it's not the only one. So every month in community news you'll find the late edition of othe, our monthly newsletter, and you're able to scroll through that PDF. And if you wanted to, you could, I'm not going to, I could click the pop out and you'd be able to download the PDF. So that's worth having a bit of a think about. You'll see that there's also latest forum posts being collected from a variety of places. It's all the latest forum posts, the last 5 or 6 from across the Kiwi Connection site. It's also a good place to be aware of our far country correspondence. Dorothy down in Riverton provides the occasional update on what's happening in the Riverton area. David Hill is a great blogger from Christchurch, and I created Zine 2 of one of his blog posts. John Evans, the West Island in Australia, he lives in Melbourne. You really should subscribe to John's blog post, the West Island, and likewise John Brock if you're interested in photography from the Pohongina Valley. Now here was our first zine, Archetypes in the Bible. Our zine it's actually sitting in your web browser, and so if I click read now, I've gone off to a totally different space, wonderful space, and I can, the little dots at the bottom, I can bring up like a kind of index of what's happening in this zine. So if I went over to page 7, there we have a Rosalie Segrew's, it's actually at quite a big size at present, unintentionally, but you've got Rosalie's matching personality types in the Bible to archetypes. So that's really good from a practical point of view. A zine is available in any web browser, be it Safari of Apple fame, or Windows Explorer and Next from Windows, or Chrome or Firefox. The zine is a new way of displaying information, and this becomes a downloadable PDF. When you actually click on read more in the zine, you can download that as a PDF if you want, and otherwise it just up in the cloud. Zip over to Creative Spaces to show you the most amazing insight into zines. And it actually comes from Lavinia. And I'm just going to click on Lavinia's Postcards of the Cross, and that was a wonderful work. It's a collection of pages, well worth having a look at. It pays to indicate to creators, if you like their work, scroll to the very bottom of the page. Now, many of you see things like this little add a comment here, and it's really, that's just for a comment on a detail of the page. If you really like the page, scroll to get to the absolute bottom of the page, and there it'll say comments, and that's where you should make your comment. And when you've made your comment, scroll down further and click comment, otherwise it won't save. So that's Postcards of the Cross, a wonderful bit of writing from Lavinia, but I want to show you what she was on about with zines. Now, I just clicked on Lavinia's name and it's taken me through to her profile page. And you'll see there she's been working away, composing and painting the edge of the universe, 16 pages from 2014. Unbelievable, really, that all of this work could have been lost. So I'm so glad that we've collectively been able to preserve it. But here's her latest, Journey in January. And it's a zine, and it's inspired by Mills and Boon. And I'd like to read you this because it's so fascinating. When Mills and Boon Publishing turned 100, that's Lavinia, became fascinated with the changing social comment on gender relationships recorded by their cover images, but rather using the zine like a cover that starts to unpack ways of getting to different things. It could be to video, it could be to the complete sermon itself, and so on and so forth. What's your opinion? And don't be shy, what's your opinion of what a zine is all about? Now, hopefully I'm sharing this screen, which is alive on air on my Facebook. And we've been working away at putting various live on air into very short movie form, Stuart McAdam and myself, and seeing what happens. But it's this one, the zine that we did for David Hill. How did that zine, now look here, we can see that over 5,332 people were reached with this particular boosted post, and it resulted in 1,274 more likes. Now, another thing that we're doing with Zines, and all credit to Stuart McAdam for forcing me along the track here, is that we're now putting all the videos, I shouldn't say all, the great majority of the videos are now also here in Soundcraft, available as podcasts. And they'll come out on iTunes eventually. So what we're getting at in all of this is that the whole aim of creating the zine is that you're getting your work into a much wider social media setting than you would normally be able to do. Most churches have a website or a blogspot or something like that, and they encourage, whether it's a lay preacher or a clergy, to put the Sunday sermon up there. And that's in the static image realm. Most people will simply bypass that. There's just such a huge welter of information out there how are people ever going to really know about the great sermon that you preached, just for example, say in Palmerston North today, or the particular social event that was really imaginative for your congregation? I don't know, it might have been an egg and spoon race to raise money for the hospital in Sassamonga or whatever. All of those things are worthy in themselves, but here's the critical point of interaction. Virtually no one else sees them but in the little congregation. Now, you can see here in the Waiake church, which, just for argument's sake, I call the e-learning centre. They don't do much e-learning from it, but nevertheless, that's its sort of spiritual home, if you like. Today's congregation had the Pilgrim Players come and do a performance, but unfortunately there were only about 30-35 in the congregation there. And even more unfortunately, Pilgrim Players, which has been going for 40 odd years, has decided to close down because the organising committee has become too old to be able to do all the things like build sets, do the back of house necessary things, costumes, selling tickets, all of that kind of thing. And I thought it was exactly as most of our churches have become. They're full of fairly elderly people, by and large. I know all of you will say I'm not elderly, but well, possibly you might. The critical thing is that there are no volunteers. No one's going to come to the rescue, and that means, honestly, you can't go on doing the same things that you've been doing and think that it's all going to turn out okay, because it'll just be like Pilgrim Productions. Eventually it's got to close down. When a zine that conveys information about the Christian message, about a positive approach to life, about things that can be done that take us outside of ourselves and start to build genuine community, then it seems to me self-evident that we cannot keep on doing what we have been doing. And that's what I like about Kiwi Connection. I look at the immense creativity. Someone like Rosalie, if you haven't read her book called The Greys and the Greens, I'd get hold of it. Because greys and greens, well, it's kind of staggering. I don't know how much of it is fact and how much is fiction. You'd better type that in the chat pod, Rosalie. But there's some very interesting stories that cause me to think. I don't think it's possible to, whether you're aged 9 or 90, I don't think it's possible to say that church can continue unless it begins this huge engaged arena of conversation. Doesn't matter whether it's through video, zines, podcasts, whatever, so that the essential Christian message doesn't get lost in this huge sea, this huge tsunami of information that we're now undergoing. And we'll bring the broadcast to a close.